We are building lab tests on your phone. My name's Dr. Therese Canares. I'm the CEO and founder of Cury DX and a pediatric emergency physician at Johns Hopkins. What I see in my patients every day is fear. Fear from not knowing, why is my child sick?
How does the business model work?
So we are starting subscription model, dollars a year. We're projecting reaching 10,000 patients over the next 2 years.
Where does the 10,000 patients get you revenue?
It's around...
My name is Therese Canares, and I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. I've been a pediatric emergency physician for 10 years at Johns Hopkins. There's truly nothing like it. But that type of work, as powerful as it is, it doesn't scale.
I'm Josh Muccio, and this is The Pitch, where startup founders raise millions and listeners can invest. Today on the show, Dr. Therese Canares pitches an app that can detect strep throat using the camera in your pocket.
Most of my physician colleagues think I'm crazy. I don't see it as leaving the medicine behind. I see myself as taking it with me to do something that is truly magical, life-changing, world-changing, healthcare-changing. This, I think, is what I'm here to do.
The pitch for Curie DX is coming up after this. And whether you're watching or listening on YouTube, Patreon, or your favorite podcast player, thanks so much for subscribing. And don't forget to turn on notifications. Welcome back to The Pitch for Curie DX. Let's meet the investors. Paige Doherty with Behind Genius Ventures.
What gets me to that hell yes conviction? It's a founder who deeply understands both sides of the business.
Elizabeth Yin with Hustle Fund.
You're an A+ founder.
Charles Hudson with Precursor Ventures.
I feel like I'm the lone dissenter.
Jesse Middleton with Flybridge.
I normally don't like ed tech, but I really like you.
And Jenny Fielding with Everywhere Ventures.
Toughen up there, lady. That's healthcare.
That one was solid.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. You're getting better every time.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Therese. Nice to meet you, Jesse. Hi. Hi, Paige.
Good to see you again.
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth,
Nice
great to meet you.
Hi.
Hi, Jenny.
Hey, Charles, how are you?
So exciting.
All right, this part's a delicate balance.
You got it.
All right, so great to meet you all. My name's Dr. Therese Canares. I'm the CEO and founder of Cury DX and a pediatric emergency physician at Johns Hopkins. What I see in my patients every day is fear. Fear from not knowing, why is my child sick? It's that fear that drives families to rush to the emergency room on a Friday night and wait 3 hours for what ends up being a cold virus. Now, I want to keep families at home and relieve that fear, but here's the problem. For things like sore throat, you cannot do a strep throat test at home or on a video visit with your doctor. So my team and I created Curie DX. We're a mobile app that predicts diseases like strep throat using a smartphone image and AI. We're starting with strep. We have 5 other conditions in our pipeline. Think pink eye, urinary tract infections, kidney disease. We are building lab tests on your phone. We're using computer vision to build a B2B SaaS healthcare company. We launched last month. We have 2 pilot customers who are national primary and urgent care practices. And to reach patients faster, we're launching direct-to-consumer this month. Just in the last 3 weeks, we've partnered with 8 physician practices covering 40 states to pair telehealth with our app. We've submitted 2 patent applications and received over $1.5 million in non-dilutive and investment capital. We're now raising $4 million, which helps us reach our first 10,000 patients and get the strep product through FDA, from a screening tool to a diagnostic. Help us serve 2.1 billion patients globally who have to travel for swabs and blood tests and urine tests. We are building a world where you can answer the question, why am I sick, in seconds.
I definitely resonate with this when you were talking about trying to check on strep throat remotely. I've actually tried years ago when my kids were younger to use basically
take a picture,
a video conference and have the kid open his mouth.
How'd it go?
It doesn't work so well.
Yes. It's hard.
But it was pretty hilarious in hindsight.
Do you require any sort of hardware, not smart hardware, but anything else, or it's pure camera?
So this is just purely image-based disease screening and diagnostics.
Got it.
Just with what you have in your pocket.
So actually, let's talk tactically about this, like take strep throat. How do you even get like a clear picture in someone's mouth?
So that was the first thing that we solved for. In our app, we do some live image-based guidance. So we have AI models that are continuously running and saying, it's out of focus, move your camera. It forces the flash on, so lighting's controlled for. It's constantly scanning to see if a good view of the tonsils are in focus. And if it's not, it'll keep scanning and prompting you and giving you guidance.
And it's enough to capture whatever the white spots or whatever it is you're looking for?
Yeah. I had a physician assistant say, that's the best view of the throat I've ever seen.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess like at a higher level, how does the business model work?
So we are starting as a B2B SaaS, so subscription model where small to medium practice, either whether it's primary care or urgent care, $10,000 a year, that would get about 500 uses.
And how much of this do you take care of? In other words, you help guide the parent in taking the photo. Do you also do the diagnosis of, yes, this is strep, or do you send that to the providers?
A little bit of both, but more the latter. The physician is able to look at the AI analysis, the symptoms, the image, and come to their own decision. Right now, we're starting as a screening test, and that's partly for regulatory purposes. We're not coming out at the gates saying definitively yes or no. So we're doing more risk prediction. The intention is to go through clinical trials, which we're planning for in Q4 of 25, go through FDA, and get approved as a diagnostic.
And
So you have to go through FDA, meaning that you're considered a medical device?
Yeah, software as a medical device is a new-ish category that the FDA is defining and looking at.
So does that mean the FDA is like a 510 or it's one of these lesser?
We're looking at a de novo pathway.
A de novo pathway. Okay, so that's going to be shorter and less expensive.
The opposite. De novo means there's no existing device that is so similar to yours that you can say, oh, we're just like that one, which I think also creates a competitive moat because there are no other products quite like what we're doing right now. De novos tend to be more money, take a little longer, but then also historically have better outcomes and better multiples for their investors.
And then the reason that you're going through the FDA approval is...
Great question.
Because I'm sure that was like a decision as well. Because like if you're not FDA approved, then you can like make those fast iterations.
Yes. No, that's a great question, Paige. So we're able to launch now as a risk prediction or screening tool because we're not making a decision and we're not giving a definitive yes, no. And in doing so, we're able to launch faster and start generating revenue now. The intention to go through FDA is that gives us an extra layer of credibility because our intention is to, as we get out of these small and medium-sized practices, to start moving into larger enterprise customers and bigger contracts, so like health systems and payers. And to get to that level, we are going to need to be an FDA reviewed and approved device.
Got it. So it's more like in preparing to sell to larger enterprises, that's like a requirement for buying software.
Yes, that's going to be the standard that they're looking at to integrate a tool like ours.
Got it.
So do you have a sense, like quantitatively, how you compare to like an actual culture swab?
So the rapid swab that you traditionally do at the doctor's office, the one that comes back in 15 minutes, that's about 95% accurate. So it's good, but it's not perfect. And the physicians are 64%. So we are around 88% right now accuracy. And we were just at like 77% a few months ago. So with our trajectory, we're expecting to reach low 90s accuracy in the next few months.
That's pretty good.
That's great. Can you talk about the raise? So $4 million, it's a lot of money. I understand part of it goes to FDA, but can you map out where that money is going to and kind of what the metrics you hope to get to?
Sure. So the $4 million, about 50% of that is tech and R&D, about 25% to sales and marketing, and 10% to FDA, clinical trials and FDA, and the remainder is G&A. Our goal is to reach 10,000 patient users by the end of 2026. So we're looking at about a 2-year runway with this. So the sales and marketing component is partly the direct-to-consumer, as well as continuing to expand the B2B customer base. The 10,000 users that as a milestone was chosen in part because we have advisors at Amazon One Medical and also CareFirst Blue Cross Blue Shield. And feedback that they've given us is when we get into the 10,000 user range, that's when they start paying attention and looking at strategic partnerships.
Got it. And how's the fundraise going?
We have 1 million self-circled, so Good.
Are you looking for a lead investor, or how are you putting the round
We would
together?
welcome a lead.
Gotcha.
Tell us a little bit about your prior raise, because it sounds like you said you've raised a fair bit with both non-dilutive and dilutive funding.
Yes.
What was sort of that breakdown and what that look like?
We've had a great success and a great track record with non-dilutive. So we've gotten over $1 million in both grants and federal contracts. Strep was the low-hanging fruit, but the intention is to grow this into multiple diseases. So one of our contracts is to build out the respiratory prediction. On the non-dilutive front, we're targeting at least $2 million in the next year. And the remainder of the raise, we've had a couple of investors. So one was Tedco, the other is an SPV of Friends, Family, and Angels.
Oh, okay. So from a dilutive standpoint, you've only raised about $500,000.
Correct.
And what were the terms on that?
So it's on a safe, $6 million cap, 20% discount.
Can you talk a little bit about the prior to FDA approval while you're in this stage? Would I be right to assume, I think you said it was like 500 patients for the 10,000 a year was sort of the current contract. And so if you hit your goal, it'll be a couple 100,000. So how do you sort of think about that business versus post FDA approval? Does it fundamentally change? Does the economics get better? Does the size get bigger? Or just how does this business evolve?
So early on, these are, annual contracts with the small and medium businesses. What I anticipate is as we get the first product through FDA, and what we're working on in parallel, of course, is developing some of the other products. And I'll mention too, we also have proof of concept on a model that predicts urinary tract infections from a picture of a cup of urine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Nice.
it's a little bit atypical. And we have, just on the proof of concept model, we have 88% accuracy on that. I'll just say that you cannot unsee what I have seen with our data collection. But getting back to your question of what do things look like post-FDA? So in parallel of building the Strep product, we're also working on a couple of other conditions. The respiratory R&D is underway, the UTI R&D is underway. So what I'm anticipating is once we start going after health system customers, we expect to be a multi-disease platform at that point.
Yeah.
And so I'm expecting our contract size to be significantly greater, and our revenue streams are going to be more significantly coming from those large enterprise customers.
And they'd come from the health systems. Would they also come from the payers, though? Would you be able to bill through as your...
We're looking at payers, too. Yeah, we've had a few conversations with them, but they all kind of say the same thing, which is I want to see the data of how it's working in real patients.
Can I ask you a very direct question?
You most certainly can, right after the break.
Can I ask you a very direct question?
I love direct.
Why is it that you are trying to go the D2C route, like when you only have 2 B2B pilots? Like, is that not working as well as you expected? Is it slow? Like, what?
We're finding that even with the small to medium practices, it can sometimes take closer to 6 months and back and forth on legal, whereas with direct to consumer, we have a little more control over pushing that out and generating revenue. Yeah. So it's partly speed and also data. As you probably know, with AI, the data that trains your models is gold. And so by creating this direct to consumer avenue, then patients are coming to us. And that data, we can still use that for our training models.
Yeah, I get that. I think it just feels like you are spreading your energies across a couple of channels.
I recognize that, yeah.
Typically, when I hear a company make that argument you just made, the framing is we're going to do D2C first. It may not be profitable on a unit economics basis or whatever, but we're going to get all the data we need. We can control the speed and all the stuff. And then we can take that and go sell to these bigger orgs.
That's more or less what we're doing. So we had started off with the intention to be a B2B company. But what I found in the last 6 to 9 months is that the sales cycles are slower than I thought they would be. And my ability as a salesperson, there's definitely refinement that needs to happen there and efficiencies. And so it's a little bit more of a let's focus on DTC
that's just healthcare.
for now.
That's not you.
Sometimes cycles are very long.
This is not going to change.
Yeah,
that's true. And so my intention is to focus on DTC for the next 6 months or so and just get some DTC data and users.
And so what level of data do you anticipate trying to get in the next, call it 6 months?
It's hard to say because I don't know what will happen with this direct-to-consumer launch. There's a lot of hypotheses.
You can always milk it, right? Like it may not be profitable, but you can always buy ads up the wazoo and get your patients in the door. So if the priority is we're going to go and get 10,000 people, you can do it, right? Who knows how much money it costs, but you can do it.
Right.
So I guess my question is like, how do you think about it? I'm just trying to understand the roadmap, and I think I'm still kind of scratching my head around where you get to with $6 million, because it sounds like you're still going to be at a very beginning stage with $6 million in how you describe it. Like this, and maybe I'm missing something.
Let me clarify, and hopefully this gives some clarity. So we are targeting a $4 million raise. Should we get the grants that we're targeting, that would be wonderful, because then that's extra capital that we can leverage, and then we're able to build other product lines faster. So that's how we would use the 4 plus 2. The 4 is for building direct-to-consumer early, transitioning to B2B, and with those combined, reaching 10,000 patients by the end of 2026, as well as clinical trials and FDA.
Where does the 10,000 patients get you revenue-wise? Is there like a number tied to that?
Yes, it's around 6 million total. Yes, 6 million total by the end of 2026.
Help me understand how 10,000 patients would be $6 million, because my math would be it's a lot less than that.
So let's see. We are a portion of that is going to be from the direct-to-consumer component. We're working on pricing on that because I don't know yet. We're going to be experimenting a bit with. I'll know in a few weeks.
Yeah.
I'll be able to give you some more data on that.
$500 a test, or I assume it's closer to like $100, which is what you're charging your clinics.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. Okay. If I did my math right, you're charging your clinics roughly $100 a test, at 10,000 a year, 500 tests. I think you said.
Right.
Okay. And so, if we take $100 a test times 10,000 tests, that wouldn't get me to $1 million.
Not 6.
That's $1 million.
Yes. It's a combination of that, and we would expect at least 30 to 40 B2B customers, like annual subscribing customers at that point.
So you would be working on that in parallel.
Yeah. The intention is direct to consumer for the relatively short period, around 6 months from now. So like Q3 of 25, we start pouring efforts back into the B2B component and slowly build up that urgent care and small to medium practice customer base.
To ask the direct question, it sounds like there's a bit of hesitation on committing to B2B or committing to direct to consumer. They're dramatically different long-term decisions you'll need to make for either one. So I would say, is this something that you're still trying to figure out internally, or do you feel like after the 6 months you're like, okay, now we're done with direct to consumer, that was just to gather data and we're wanting a full B2B?
More the latter. What I know will end up being a better business long term is being a B2B business.
So of the 8,000 urgent cares, how many would you say are in your top of funnel that you've reached out to or talked to so far? And then how many are in discussion stage?
So this is where, we've had some transition in strategy with this direct to consumer component. In the last few months, I've started I'm probably in discussions with at least a dozen of them, but I haven't been pushing the close, in part because what I'm hearing from them too is I want to see how this is working in real life, in real patients, which is, again, part of the direct-to-consumer component, to be able to say, oh, here's an example of how it worked, here's how it impacted this family, here's what it did for antibiotic prescribing.
Yeah.
So I think for myself, you're incredibly impressive. I love your background, and you have just hustled, the hell out of this business to get where you are. So I love that. I think with multiple business models, a $4 million raise, which is, quite high for me as a pre-seed, and the FDA path, I think that's going to be just a complicated one for me to get my head around. So I think I'm out. That said, if things change, which they often do, and you guys decide, to kind of pick a lane for now and potentially do a smaller raise, then I'd love to stay in touch.
That sounds great, Jenny. Yeah. And, on the topic of a smaller raise, we may have some flexibility in how much we're raising, in part because some of our raise could be offset by non-dilutive, which is great.
Yeah.
I'd just say we've done a bunch of FDA things. Always takes longer. Always costs more money. $4 million is not a lot in the context of every company we've done that's had to go through meaningful FDA. I assume a hardware company takes $7 to $10 million to get the thing done. So this is in spec. I just think you're putting a lot of pressure on the company to finish the product, test out D2C, test out B2B, get the FDA thing done. I almost want you to do less. I think if you had said, we're not entirely sure which business model we're going to pursue, that will become clear as we continue to have conversations. I think this conversation would have served you better. I think the truth is it's hard to know.
That is true.
So I'm not in now, given the current state of the product and the tech.
I agree with Charles. I don't think that for getting FDA approvals, this is a lot of money. I guess partly why I asked the question is it's sort of self-serving. We're pre-seed investors. We tend to prefer lower valuations. I would say, though, echoing all of these points, you are doing a lot, and I just know how hard it is to even do one thing as a founding team. And I think you have to kind of do one thing at a time. It's really hard to do many things all at once well. What I would have liked to have heard is, okay, we're going to test B2B. Instead of talking with a dozen people, we're going to, hit the phones and talk with 100 people or whatever it is, and then we get the feedback that we want. It sounds like you kind of already know from 12, but probably would have liked to have seen more prospecting there to really know, okay, they are not going to sign up for this right now. We are going to park that. Now we're going to go and do only D2C, test that, and then maybe park that. Do things sort of sequentially rather than trying to do everything in parallel, half-baked. I'm not actually sure I'm on board with doing the FDA trials on this raise, because it sounds like you can still get the outcomes you're looking for by basically providing insights to physicians and partnering with them. Maybe you make less money and you own less of the stack, whatever it is, but it sounds like you can get a sale done. And I would probably try to focus on the problem we're trying to solve right now is how do we make sure we have something accurate, and how do we make sure that people are using this and that there's some form of payment? That's the thing I would solve for. And then maybe later you start to figure out how can I own more of that stack by getting the FDA trials. But I think echoing all these points, it's too much, all in parallel in one raise. So I'm out. You're super impressive. And I really want this to exist.
It will be available in a few weeks, so I will let you know what it is. Thank you for that feedback.
There are parts of your pitch I really like, and there are parts that either I don't understand or I don't believe. For me, I think there's a business to be built. I think there's actually a good business at each step here. And I worry that you're sort of talking yourself into I need to do these things together because they create value. But I think you actually have enough, this customer so well, you've lived it, that I'm not sure you need to prove that. I think you have the answer. It's you need the 10,000 patients or whatever the number is. And as soon as you do that, you have enough stories, enough data, and then you can unlock FDA approval after that. That's sort of my sensitivity. There's a company on this show last season that I invested in called Vital Audio that was going through a similar journey. They take your vital signs out of your voice only, so it's software. And they sort of gone on the same journey. At one point, he was talking about, I got to sell both the doctors and the practices and the health systems and the 911 operators and the consumer. And I think he's found that he knows enough to be able to know the order of operations now. And if you do know it, which I think you do, you can get away with raising less capital, diluting less, but also, frankly, moving faster. You're at an earlier stage than maybe the raise would let on in my mind. And so I just think that if it changed, we may be interested, but in the current raise, it's probably not a fit for us.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for that feedback.
I'm not sure I'm going to add anything novel. I think everyone made a lot of great points here. The thing I think about as an engineer is it's way easier to do a math problem if you constrain the variables. And it seems like you know so much about the space that you're adding all of these different variables. And if the raise was a smaller amount and you're just looking to get the 10,000 direct to consumer folks and then reevaluate another raise after that based on your learnings and whether you want to which business model you want to pursue, that feels like a much better fit for our fund. If that's something that you are open to considering, I think we should continue the conversation. But the $4 million raise with many variables is less of a fit for us.
Great. Thank you for that feedback. What I'm hearing is not yet, hang on, let's keep in touch.
I think if I succinctly recap what everyone said, it's different plan, smaller raise.
I can work with that. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you all.
Thank you.
It's
Thank
great
you.
to meet you all.
Therese, before you...
Yes.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry to interrupt the clap. Are you open to raising less?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, since Josh asked,
Hey, that's me, interrupting the pitch again. Speaking of interruptions, we'll be right back. Are you open to raising less?
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, since Josh asked, if we were to do something on the order of 2 million, would that sound more like in range? And then what we would accomplish there is just sales. And we leave R&D stuff for federal grant funding.
Wait, if this is the raise that you want to do, don't change your mind at this table because you're being asked to.
I disagree with that.
I'm not at all.
I vehemently disagree with that. I think
Yeah.
every founder should come in with multiple plans.
Yeah, for sure.
What happens if you can't? If you can
I
raise?
disagree with that.
I think
that's
And I agree with Charles.
No, I don't think you necessarily
Spider-Man.
present all
Yeah.
several plans, but you should have like a plan in mind for if you cannot raise X, you should be able to do something with Y.
So I
I
agree with that.
100% agree
So
with that.
I agree with that.
If the company's dead in the water because you can't raise
Yeah.
X, that's a problem.
My only point was we did not talk about that plan much, right? So the plan that you presented was
Yes.
these multiple models
Right.
at the same time, whatever. So
Right.
so I feel like it would require a longer conversation. You're like, yes, I have an idea for that. Let's talk about it.
I
As
don't think
opposed
you
to
need to
like,
decide
like
today.
I could
Yeah,
take
yeah,
this
yeah.
deal
I
and make
agree.
it into.
I don't
that's-
like asking someone to reforecast on the spot.
Yeah, that was.
I'm not suggesting
Yes.
that.
So-
Yeah.
Just some things to think about, not for us
Yes.
to project, though.
Yes, thank you. Okay, well, let's continue the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So good to meet you all.
Good to meet you.
Come on over, Josh. You can do it.
Thinking of another deal we did last season, Charles, was Doppel.
It's going to take him a lot of money. I have no illusions. Ryan and I maybe are not still on the same page about how much money it's going to take, but neither one of us think it's going to be cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have multiple companies that have gone through FDA in the last 5 years. We have multiple that have gone the grant route, and I agree, it's a great thing. If you can make it fit, the biggest mistake we've seen founders do is take grants that don't fit in their existing plan. Like it's like create the plan, then if there happens to be a grant that fits, great. But like that's not always the case. You kind of have to squint and like, maybe it's a slightly different disease that the grant helps, and it's like, that wasn't your plan. But
I just think there's a way of her positioning this because she's in most companies that have to go through FDA don't have a plan of not going through FDA. And so she's in a really strong position to say like, I have a business here. And I can make my business even bigger down the road when we get there. But she was kind of like she reversed the order and that confused us. And then it the
felt like
story
too
got
many things are happening.
Too
I
many
would also
things.
like her to
But
button
like
up.
she is in a great position.
The financial part, she needs to button up because my math is she'll make $500,000 a year in the next 2 years, not $6 million. I'm not sure in any way you get to $6 million in what she presented here.
Well,
So
that was with like 30 to 40 B2B customers.
like that's just
Shouldn't
straight
have all
math.
our numbers.
So I just but part of that is why I was hesitant to come up with a new plan here because I think there's some underneath that like what is the consumer business? Like 10,000 tests for people who might have strep seems like a really tiny number if you just did the consumer thing for the next couple of years. I do think there is a plan to be made in that and most companies that need to go through FDA, I agree, they don't have a business unless they get through it.
It's pretty cool.
And she does.
But stepping back for just a second, like how much of this do you see a founder and you're like, wow, this is incredible. I can coach them into, because like, I think you can be inherently good at building product, inherently good at understanding your market, but like fundraising is an entirely separate skill. How do you think about like coaching a founder like that, like messaging and fundraising perspective? Like what would you have wanted to hear?
There's a difference between coaching someone on how to pitch and the content of the pitch.
Yeah.
I think what you heard from us was not, I think most of us were like, there's some stylistic things that maybe we would critique her on. Most of the questions here were actually the substance of
It was like the fundamentals.
about the plan.
Yeah.
And I think there's a difference between teaching people, hey, here's how you respond to a VC, asking you if you would raise us money. Here's how you answer these questions versus the content of what you pitch. I find it's harder to coach people on that.
Yeah.
Because that's their belief about what they're going to do. I assume if I give you $1, you're going to do with it what you already think is the best. You're not going to actually
ask me.
me. I'm going to give you the money and you're going to go do the thing. So it's really important that I have a high degree of confidence that the thing you're going to do is generally in the direction I think you should go.
Yeah.
You can coach people on presentation, on answering questions. I think it's hard to coach people on like the thing they want to build. I think she came in here and told us that because that's what she thinks she would do if we gave her $4 million.
Yeah.
I believe she would do all of those things.
I don't think the takeaway should have been you need to raise less money because we write smaller checks.
Yeah, no, it's
the
not about the
takeaway
realm.
was there's
It's
a
about the
different plan
Yeah.
entirely than what she presented. So it's a different order potentially. It's a different size and scale. It's a different business model potentially. Like there's a bunch of things that may change in what she presented. What she presented was 10,000 patients across consumer and B2B. We collectively are like, that's wrong. So let's start there. Like you should do one or the other. How you get 10,000 consumers is very different than B2B. We didn't even get into like what her breakdown was.
Trying to do both consumer and B2B at the same time is really, really hard with a small team. I've tried it. It's hard.
Yeah. I will give you, I invested in Vital Audio because of the show. And I will tell you that he is dead set on going B2B. And I would love for him to offer a consumer version of this product. And he just really doesn't want to do it. And I am okay with that because I'm trusting his judgment. Yeah. But I know that's where he's going. And so I may or may not invest more capital in that business because we agree or disagree. But like, I know where he wants to go. And if I asked him tomorrow, like, yeah, but if I invest, will you do consumer? And he said, yep. I'd be like, okay, I don't want to invest there. Like, I don't want you to be like, yeah, never mind, I'll do consumer, even though I've been super clear I won't do consumer.
Freaking VCs.
Like I have asked him for a consumer version just to demo it even. And he's like, it's really not something for consumers. And he may be right, and I've invested in him, and I'm on that journey with him. But like, my issue is not what he's raising or what he's, that's his plan. I can agree or disagree. And I think that's what we're hearing here is that was her plan.
Yeah.
And we disagree with that plan.
I
We
also
could
feel
talk
like
more.
we weren't convinced by the why. So we pushed her a few times.
Yeah.
So why are you doing it these ways? And she kind of didn't give me a convincing answer. It was just like, we've thought about it and this is the best way to accumulate the data. And I think we all just don't believe that.
Like, there have also definitely been founders whom I've been impressed by and have disagreed with their plan, but I still have conviction that they know better than I.
do, yeah.
But I felt like, to Jenny's point, I didn't understand kind of where some of these ideas were coming from and didn't agree.
I also think like she's not talking to enough healthcare founders because she's like, yeah, these deals can take 6 months. I'm like, that's healthcare. And that's not bad.
Yeah.
So like
She's
you're just
taking
gonna
that as a
have
negative
to,
signal. It's not.
Yeah, toughen up there, lady. That's healthcare.
Yeah.
I mean, it can take a very long time.
All right.
Cool.
Great pitch. Great feedback.
We're just not spending much money though, guys. Like I've come all the way to Florida. I want to spend some time.
We can at least do the next pitch in the sun.
We got 2 more.
Therese walked out of the pitch room without a commitment, but she sure got a healthy dose of VC feedback. We caught up with Therese a few months after the pitch and found out that her plan remains relatively unchanged. She's raising $3.5 million now instead of $4 million. And she launched the Cury DX app to the public. One of the very first users was actually Therese.
My older daughter, she'd been saying she had a headache for a couple days. And then she started saying like, I don't feel good. And I was like, I think you have strep. Hang on.
So you got excited?
Yeah. And so like I whipped out my app and like it was this amazing full circle moment of like,
Did she have strep?
yeah, she did. She did. I validated it too with because I have a home strep kit, which
Of course you do. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I swabbed her too and confirmed it was positive. And it was like, oh, I'm sorry you're sick, but thank you.
But thank you. This is great for the business. We'll let you know in the season finale if Therese is able to close her round. If you want to watch the finale live on YouTube with other fans of the show, RSVP at pitch.show/party. I'll be there in the chat. No offer to invest in CurieDx is being made to the listening audience on today's show, but you can join our private investor community on Substack, where you'll get access to the deals we're doing behind the scenes. So if you're an accredited investor, you can apply to join at thepitch.fund. Next week on The Pitch.
We have $1 trillion labor shortage across frontline industries in the country right now. In hospitality alone, there's 248,000 job openings. To tackle this, hotels are spending money on software at a record pace. That's why we're building Levy. We're building AI agents for frontline hospitality work.
Do you ever get pushback from the users? Do they feel like they're being tracked in some way that makes them uncomfortable?
The very, very, very first piece of feedback that we got from a housekeeper was, does this mean I'm not going to get yelled at anymore? And that was one of those moments where like, damn, I think we got it.
Oh, cool.
I really like your background. Like, I like sales go-getter types.
At what price would you be interested?
I don't want to insult you, but I think...
That's next week. Season 13 is available to watch on YouTube and Patreon, or listen on your favorite podcast player. Applications are now open for Season 14 of The Pitch. So if you're raising capital for your startup, or you plan to raise in the fall, you can apply to pitch. No deck required. Just fill out our quick form at pitch.show/apply. We'll see you next Wednesday in the pitch room.
This episode was made by me, Josh Muccio, Lisa Muccio, Anna Ladd, Enoch Kim, and Jackie Papanair, with deal sourcing by Peter Liu, John Alvarez, and Phoebe Sun. Music in this episode is by The Musemaker, Breakmaster Cylinder, Desjardins, Boxwood Orchestra, Kathy Nostro, Skittle, Jonathan Hadel, and Peter Jean and The Runaway Queen. The Pitch is made in partnership with the Vox Media Podcast Network.